Um, Ernst, do you want to introduce Giorgio?
Yes, hello, Giorgio. Welcome to our space. You messaged me saying that you're from Peru and you want scientists to come to Peru and that you're
Yes,
researching the tridactyls. Welcome to our space.
thank you, Ursula. Yes, yeah, I happen to be hearing by chance this podcast, this transmission. Yeah, I'm from Peru. My name is Giorgio Piacenza, and since 2016, I have been helping the Universidad Nacional San Luis Gonzaga, also known as the University of Ica, that has four or five bodies in custody, and we presented along with three U.S. forensic scientists. We presented our case to the Peruvian Congress about 2 months ago, I think, and I was the interpreter for the U.S. speakers, and we were asking the Peruvian government to facilitate the investigations. And well, the research is very legitimate. It's confusing because, as somebody said before, there are some dolls and uh, puppets made. But, for example, 11 scientists from the University of Ica um, have been researching this for several years, and they wrote a declaration, a formal declaration regarding some of the characteristics that are anomalous on the real specimens. And we had, of course, William Rodriguez that worked for the Pentagon and who's a forensic scientist, and also John McDowell, one of the founders of the American Institute of Forensic Sciences. And we had Jim Caruso, who is a scientist, a forensic scientist that works for the county of Denver in Colorado. And all of them, I was with them, and we were looking at these mummies with different tomographers in Lima. Besides the bodies that are at the University of Ica, there were new bodies here in Lima, and they could not find any cut and paste job. The ligaments, the teguments, are intact in most cases, and the concave and convex aspects of the bones, they fit together very well. Um, so these things cannot be just ignored because they are associated with Jaime Maussan. That's completely secondary. I understand that Jaime gets enthusiastic and has made mistakes in the past, but this is a scientific endeavor. Um, some of these scientists that I know recently published in a journal, top-rated journal, craniometric studies of one of these mummies, and it was found that they are anomalous indeed. The cranium has like a 30% more volume in this particular case, and as a measure of good faith of this research, it should be recognized. Um, Genetic samples were taken from two of these specimens, and they were sequenced with the next generation sequencing, which is the most advanced techniques today. And they were published in the National Institutes of Health in the United States. And any bioinformatician that has a supercomputer and knows what he's doing can look at these samples. And so one of the main impediments is all this idea that, oh, Jaime Maussan is associated with this and therefore it has I don't want anything to do with it. Well,
If
what
if I
about
may,
all the
if
information?
I may, and I apologize interrupting. I'm so sorry, but what
Yeah,
were the
what you
Um,
results?
talking about?
hun, hun,
What were
hold
the
on one
results of
second.
the? What,
Hold on one second, you guys. First of all, Giorgio, welcome to the space. It's a pleasure to have you. I know that we're going to have some questions from everyone. Um, you bring a fascinating subject with some real, possible conclusions. So thank you very much for being here. So right now I'd like to go to Yankee, who has his hand up, and then Hung, and then back to Giorgio at any time for any questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, Georgia, I had two questions for you. I did go, while you were speaking, I went on your Twitter feed and was reading some of your posts, and it appears as though these beings are hybridized beings. I'm just speculating, that were created by a race potentially that added their own genes to the genes of what might have been human genes, DNA, and monkey DNA. I'm just paraphrasing. Is that kind of what you think possibly is going on here? And I'll follow up after that.
Yes, thus far, apparently, yes. According to the work of molecular biologist Ricardo Rangel from Mexico, that has been investing about 2 years in this research carefully. Yeah, apparently there are haplogroups that relate with a human species, but haplogroups from China, probably the Han ethnic group from China, and yes, two apes, the bonobo and the chimpanzee, and then there seems to be an unknown genetic component as well, and as far as I know, but I'm not a geneticist, but as far as I heard from these biologists, also there some of the components, genetic components of families of species, are not present specifically. So it's not a matter that we have not sequenced all the species in the world, and therefore we cannot. We can say that maybe this is a species that is unknown. No, because all the species belong to families, and the components of these families apparently of this particular family has not been found. So it would not be from a regular Earth species. And yes, I believe that centuries ago, from 2,000 years ago up to 700 years ago, approximately, there could have been a genetic intervention from an advanced non-terrestrial species coming to Earth and doing these hybrids, making these hybrids. Yes.
Okay, quick follow-up would be, are you also kind of a researcher or someone who pays attention to the news? Because as you probably know, I think it was earlier this year or last year, I can't recall, there was a lot of talk about some things that were happening in Peru. People, the pelacabras or something along those lines. Do you have any information about that? That you could give us insight as to what might have been going on there in Peru?
Well, that's a completely different subject. Yes, there have been apparently some attacks of unknown creatures in the jungles of Peru, in different areas of the jungle of Peru, and also connected to Brazil and Colombia. When I was working as a civilian technical advisor for the Peruvian Air Force years ago, researching UFOs actually, yes, we had news of a previous similar event in the jungle, in the middle of the jungle of Peru. Some villagers were calling us because they said that they were being attacked by beams of light, and they were very scared. I don't know if that case is associated with what has been recently uncovered. I do tend to believe and trust when people are calling us desperately and arming themselves to defend themselves. We have to give them some credit. Yes, but that's a completely different issue from the Nazca pterodactyls, of course.
And the mummies that Jaime put on stage are not the same creatures that you're talking about right now. Is that correct?
Well, sorry, I have a cold. Well, there are different kinds. There are about 6 different kinds that we can discern. The small You see, we interviewed the Vaquero, the great robber, the person that allegedly found these bodies. He said that the human-like bodies were placed inside a cave in the center area, and surrounding them were these little 60 centimeter humanoid creatures that look less human and more gray-like, little ones. Not exactly like grays, but smaller. And those would be two varieties. And the ones that were shown in Mexico, in my view, are legitimate ones. The ones that were later confiscated from the Lima airport, they were dolls. Actually, the artisan called the Ministry of Culture and told them, hey, I made those dolls. And they were, you could see them in the x-rays and tomographies, and they were clearly dolls. But unfortunately, the 2 or 3 scientists in the Ministry of Culture, they are bent on supporting their initial position of saying that if these are dolls, therefore everything else are dolls. Everything else must be the same. It's part of the same batch, which is really not precise. And we're trying to talk to them in order to work together. I wish we could all work together. The University of Ica invited the Ministry of Culture scientists many times, and they didn't want to go. They didn't want to participate.
Thank you,
But
Giorgio. Oh, sorry.
But recently, after 7 years, one of the Ministry of Culture of officers requested to take a body to a tomographer with their own X-ray experts, and they saw that, and they saw that in the report that he wrote, this X-ray expert from the Ministry of Culture, he said, oh, this is an anomaly. I could not find any trickery. So he basically was in support of our findings.
Thank you, Giorgio. Jay Just, Hung, and then Yankee. If anyone else has their hands up, I'm sorry, I can't see.
Okay, thanks. Georgia, I'm wondering, did they place a time period on these bodies, like when they actually lived? Can you do that?
Can you please repeat the question, because I'm in a very loud place and I could not
Oh,
hear what you were saying.
did they place a time period when these creatures were like walking on Earth, or when they were created, or do they have like time, like a time period when they were
Oh yeah,
created?
according to the carbon 14 dating, it ranges up years ago approximately. Yeah, give or take 50 years. Yeah.
So were there if they were found in Peru, right? So were there like any drawings or sketchings that show that these creatures were like living amongst the Peruvian people?
Yes, there is some iconography that suggests that there are three-finger, let's say, humanoid depictions carved in rocks, in textiles, and in ceramics. Yes, but that's debatable, because usually archaeologists and um, the people, the ethnographers and people who study symbols, they say, well, it's easier to draw 3 fingers than 5 fingers. That's what they usually say. But yeah, there are some of these entities depicted in rocks and
Do
textiles.
they
Yes,
also
yes.
know like where they lived? Did they live in caves and where they found them? And did they like eat anything specific? Did you find out what they ate?
Well, I interviewed a Russian expert in maxillofacial body components and also tomographies. And he told me that they could the small ones, the 60 centimeter ones, could only eat liquid or very mushy, very soft things. Had to be mushed, and yeah, because he said their deglution, the way they could swallow, was very, very, very limited to liquids. Yeah, that's what he said. But the larger, more human-like ones, they have teeth. We were actually going inside the mouth of these with some scopes that can see inside with lights, and they have teeth. But they do also have other differences, like the number of vertebrae is one vertebrae less, apparently, in the
And
big
they had
ones.
eggs instead of fetuses.
Well, if we are talking about the smaller ones, they seem to have reproduced with eggs inside. And many detractors said, oh, these are stones or crystals that have been obviously placed. But some of the scientists in the University of Ica, they took a sample with a very fine needle and it went through. It was not a stone, it was a fossilized egg. And this is why we're looking also for experts that are experts in reptilian eggs, for example, to come to Peru and determine what
So
this is. And yeah, well, the chemical component was consistent with calcium carbonate and other what eggs would have.
So would that lead you to believe that they're partially reptile instead of human?
Yes, yes, the smaller ones apparently are like humanoid reptiles. Reptilian, also the histological studies of the skin showed that it was highly keratinized, highly keratinized. Very much like a reptilian skin, if I'm not mistaken. So all of those studies have taken place individually, and journals refuse usually to publish anything that has to do with any other worldly stuff, be it these tridactyls or UFOs. So it's a very difficult process,
Okay, I just want to
but
get
it's
to the
beginning.
hands really quick. Sorry, Giorgio, this is amazing. Thank you for giving us this information. I want to go with, I believe it's Hung next, and then Dean, Yankee, and Gonzalo.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I have like a million questions and a million things I wanted to say, but okay, just to start off, I'm just trying to remember most of what I wanted to say. But the blending of like bonobo natural species with unknown DNA, okay, is basically essentially the story of the Anunnaki, or if you go with Ezekiel, the Book of Ezekiel, there's a lot of like mainstream theories on that. But what's interesting, and not many people know this, is that like if you look at the genetic diversity of a bonobo or a monkey or a baboon or whatever, it's like 1.06, whatever it is. But the Homo sapien DNA has a genetic diversity of like 0.04 or so. I'm making those numbers up, but I'm pretty close, and you can Google this. So what that means realistically is that the human species, Homo sapiens, genetically came from maybe 40 families at one point, okay? So that we were either almost wiped out to extinction, which is the current, mainstream theory, or that we were actually genetically engineered from a small population. But that's in our genes, and you can see the genetic diversity there. Interesting. Either way, I found that fascinating. As far as the egg thing, the real. Oh, good. You want to say something, Sarah? Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish your thought. I apologize.
No, oh, good. And you can Google this. That's a real thing. The real reptilians, I mean, who knows? I'm agnostic on that. But as far as the eggs evolving, like amphibians evolved first on the Earth because life naturally you would think is would start from water. It's the best substance to nurture life, and to get away from that was very difficult. The reason that eggs evolved is like with like land walking, it basically not being tied to the water is because when they're trying to raise their young, the egg actually conceals the moisture. So that was but what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to Earth at all to have an egg. I think it's a natural, logical, evolutionary step. That's the other thing I was going to say. And I had like a bunch of other stuff. Did you hear? What do you think? And have you heard about there was a UFO crash in Brazil? I believe it was Brazil, where they actually captured one of the aliens that was dying, and there was like an oily substance on its skin, and it actually killed a lot of the people who touched it. Have you heard of that? And I'm going to leave it
Well,
there.
the Varginha
Yep,
Varginha case.
yep. And I'm going to leave it there. But like, I like this guy a lot. Fascinating, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I also want to just really quick add Gonzalo to the conversation. He also brings a lot about this topic. So, welcome, Gonzalo. Thank you for being here.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me ask Georgia a question. Hey, Georgia, my question was, when you were translating for Dr. McDowell, is there anything you can tell us about his interaction with Flavio Estrada after the congressional hearing?
Yes, the interaction was very gentlemanly. He's a complete high-level gentleman, high-level scientist. He tried to make peace with him. He said, listen, we want to work with this, but we want to work with Peruvian scientists and with the Ministry of Culture. We don't want to do this on our own. We respect you enough to do this. On the contrary, during the congressional hearing, some of the Ministry of Culture scientists were saying, oh, you are related to ufology. Oh, that's definitely a pseudoscience. And they were trying to include ad hominem attacks that were completely unscientific. And they didn't give us enough time to present the case. But the attitude of Dr. McDowell was reconciling and very, very high level. So after the hearing, outside in the hallway, finally we could talk as regular people rather than all, uptight. And we spoke, hey, let's work together. And then Flavio Estrada asked, hey, but we would need the mummies. We would need to take the mummies to the Ministry of Culture. And they don't have a good lab. They don't have enough resources. And we are afraid that they may damage them. Okay, but I try to reconcile a middle ground position saying, okay, there are about 9, 10 maybe human-like bodies. Maybe we could give you one. You can work with one. So it's a sign of good faith. And so I hope that this continues and develops and they find a way to save face and we stop all being so conflicting with each other.
Thank you, Giorgio. I just thought it's important for people to hear that you guys tried talking to the Ministry of Culture after the hearing. And if you guys don't mind, I have a follow-up. During the pandemic, you were involved in a study regarding the implants on Alberto's hip. Is there anything you can tell us about the frequency that the implant was giving off? Because I remember there's you guys were using a scanner and scanning the implant and it was giving some pulses. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yes. Okay. I was with another group of scientists. I was with hand surgeons from Peru and other forensics and yes, when they placed one of the small 60 centimeter bodies on a table, I approached with an electrostatic meter. okay, a tri-field electrostatic meter, and also with the other tri-field meter that works more with artificial current. But I did, yes, it started to pulsate. My meter was stable, stationary. I didn't move it because it tends to give you a false reading when you move it, but it was stable. And it started to pulsate very notably, strongly, like beep, 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 beep. And so, yeah, and that was filmed, that was video, that's true. Well, about a month and a half later, I returned with more equipment, with ionizing radiation meters. I returned with current meters, other detectors, and it did not happen again. It did not happen again. And I tried it on all the mummies there in the university, and carefully, I took like 2 hours close to the mummies, to these bodies, and it did not happen again. So I don't know if it was perhaps some equipment under the table or the video cameras that were not too far away. I don't know what happened. But definitely what motivated me to try that procedure was the strange effect that came out of the tomographies taken from these alleged implants on the chest of one of these specimens. It looks like a flame. It doesn't look like the regular X-ray lines that happen. It looked like a flame. So that's why I tried these devices. And definitely, this has to be tried again, because inside one of these alleged implants, it is well known that the osmium was found, and this is a very, very rare, very, very rare metal. So yeah, it happened once, but I could not repeat it. It should be repeated perhaps under other circumstances again.
Thank you, Giorgio. We're going to go to Dean and then Yankee. Dean Yankee Science Bob. I think that's the way it goes.
Okay, thank you. Giorgio, a while back, several weeks ago, I think it was about the time, Gonzalo might be able to help me remember the time exactly. About the time that the hearing took place, I heard about the implants that were emitting a signal of some sort, an emission, an EMF emission. And I provided a link where you can purchase what's called a frequency counter. And what that device does is if the implant is emitting a specific frequency, this frequency counter will tell you what frequency it's emitting on. The late Dr. Leary, who did a lot of implant work here in the United States, used a frequency counter, and he found that many times these implants would be broadcasting on a specific radio frequency. Are you aware whether or not that link was used and followed up on with the people down there?
No, I'm the only one, as far as I know, that returned with more equipment. I returned with a multimeter. I tried to connect two implants and see if there was current flowing. And no, it didn't happen. And yes, I think I saw your presentation regarding this frequency counter, and I want to get one, and I want to go back and use it on these specimens. Yes.
Well, if you don't mind, what I'll do after the space is over with, I'll go find a link to one of those devices, and I'll forward it down there to you. And
yes,
hopefully the next opportunity we can maybe use that and figure out what frequency they may be using, because myself and one of the other gentlemen on here, Science Bob, were ham radio operators, amateur radio operators. And we use that device all the time for determining, what something might be, what frequency something might be using, whether it's a cell phone, police radio, a handheld radio, whatever it might be. And I'd be really interested to see if these implants are emitting a specific type of frequency.
I agree. Thank you, Dean. I will follow up on that. And yes, please send me information. There must be some electronic component to all of these. What is this osmium doing inside? What seemed to be also like an electronic structure, very small, inside one of these implants, covered by copper for the most part, but inside there was a strange core that had it looked almost like an electronic thing. And it was discovered destructively, taking a sample, destroying it, unfortunately, and grinding it and submitting it to a spectrometer.
What was, because I know Bob's got his hand up. He'll be wanting to talk here in a second. Bob is an actual scientist. That's just not a handle he uses here on X. He's very knowledgeable, but could you go over the types of metals that were found in these implants and in the bodies?
Yes. Well, as far as I know, and I didn't really look very carefully into this, but generally speaking, it was mostly copper, and it was called tumbago. Tumbago is the archaeological name given to these artifacts from pre-Columbian times. This metal, this aleación, this combination of metals. It's called tumbago. It's not pure gold, it's not pure copper, but the core, that's only the surrounding part. The core was osmium. And the test was done in a very reputable university, the National University of Engineering in Peru. It's a very serious university, and they have all the necessary equipment.
That's very interesting. When you say osmium, did I hear that correctly? Is it osmium, the metal?
Yes, osmium, OS.
Do they know where that type of metal's been used?
It's used in electronics, in satellites, in telecommunications, and I don't know in what else.
Oh.
It's a very, very special, very dense.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't something like that used in the Baghdad battery that they found? That was like thousands of years old. I believe it was, maybe not.
No, I don't think so. Giorgio, I will give someone else an opportunity to ask some questions. Thank you very much, and I will follow up with you and forward that link to you. And I hope it helps your endeavors and all the professionals and scientists working on the project. I hope it helps their endeavors. And I've started following your account here. So I hope we can keep in touch, and I'll do what I can to help you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I'd like to go to Yankee and then Science Bob, or I hope that works.
I want to defer to Bob first, then I'll go after Bob if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. I'm not seeing any hands, so there might be a glitch. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Giorgio, I also want to offer you a spectrum analyzer. So in addition to the counter, and they're very inexpensive ones that if you get near it are quite sensitive enough for you to see what kind of signal is coming out. So it sounds like you're already aware of something that wasn't done that needs to be done. So when I first discovered an implant in Lala that was transmitting, part of the results were skewed because I had not isolated it sufficiently from all the Wi-Fi and other crap that's in the neighborhood. So later on, when realizing that was done, I isolated her in RF shielding so that when the equipment I put up next to her forehead where I thought that there was a implant beaconing. The implant beaconing was the only signal that could have gotten to the equipment. So it's good you understand that you need to isolate it from all the crap in the environment. That's number one. Number two, in addition to the counter, which will help you know where to look on the spectrum analyzer, we can find out a lot about the signals. My final remark is uh, I founded a company called Hawkeye 360. And Hawkeye 360 is a company that uh, geolocates RF transmitters on the Earth from orbit. And using very, very small antennas and fancy mathematics, timing equipment, etc. So this was the day when all of this came together and we started this company and what we wanted to do work. It was the day I realized that I knew how things on orbit could track implants on Earth. So this is known technology and science. I even started a company around. So what I'm telling you is, with a couple of things here, I think we can do some high quality work on finding out if you see these things emitting, what it is they're emitting, and in addition to helping you find the frequency and the modulation, the spectrum analyzer will also help you estimate the transmitted power. All of these things are important to understand what kind of communication link would support that communication.
I see. I understand. Yes. I hope it works. It would be a great idea to try. Yeah.
Have you found anything interesting specifically?
No, besides that unique event when I was with the tomographers and the surgeons and all that, that was a unique event, a one-time thing. It didn't repeat itself.
That question actually was more for science, Bob. Like, did anything stand out? Were there any hot spots? Were there any thing that really caught your attention?
I'm sorry, I think it's time to go to Yankee.
All right, I'm going to get off and actually have a good night, guys. Sorry if whatever. But have a good night. Thank you for having me. Peace. Be well. Don't trust the government.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, Hung. Go ahead, Yankee.
Yeah, so Giorgio, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with we'll just call it the little creature that Dr. Stephen Greer brought forward and allegedly was debunked. Have you seen this little creature, and is that similar to the little creatures that you're referring to earlier?
No, no. Yes, I know what Gary researched with his students. It was a student project as well. And it's completely different. It's much smaller. The ones I'm referring to are approximately 60 centimeters in length, much larger. Yeah, they're different. But yes, there were cases similar to what Gary saw. For example, in Puerto Rico in the 1990s, there was a little creature found and killed. And I had it in my hands. I had it in my hands next to a physician. And she said that, no, this is not a fetus. This is not a monkey. This is strange. That's what she said. Then the person that found it interred it
Can you tell
under
us
a
more about
tree.
that?
It was approximately the size of what Gary studied, the one that is in Spain, the one that was found in Atacama. Yeah, approximately the same size, similar in some ways. Jorge Martin wrote about it and showed some pictures in his UFO magazine in Puerto Rico back in the 1990s. But a friend of mine knew where it was and brought it home, and I saw it. I held it. It was, yeah, tiny little humanoid-like creature,
If
very
you have
dry.
access to those pictures, could you post it for us if you can when you get a chance? We'd love to see that.
Yeah, I wish I could find it. I found the picture maybe a couple of years ago, somewhere in the internet. I think it's still somewhere there. And then I lost my images, but I think I could find it again.
If I was going to Google that,
Yeah.
how would you suggest I type that in the Google search?
That's a little bit different, difficult. It's you could say tetas de calle, humanoide, Jorge Martin. Yeah, somewhere around 1995.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how old you are, sir, but are you familiar at all with the Varginha case? I think it was 94 or somewhere around there.
Oh, yes. Yes, I've been following that. I hope that some more pictures emerge and the truth comes out. Yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah.
Do you believe, have you talked to anybody personally that you trust that gave you information we would call like insider information that would substantiate? I mean, I believe the story, but are you convinced it's true also?
I believe the story just like you. I did not research it personally. I just have been following it for years. It's not a recent story. And there are too many witnesses that to me sound very sincere. And why would they be lying? Especially the girls, now grown ups, and some of the officials, the military, and other witnesses. Yeah, I think it's true.
I'm going to send you a video. You may have seen it. It's not a great video. And I don't know if it's fake or real. It looks real that these soldiers were in the jungle during that time frame looking for one of these, we'll call them creatures. And I guess allegedly they found one laying in the shrubbery area. And it looks to me, if it's a fake, it's the best I've ever seen. You can see clearly the red eyes bulging out of this thing. You can see the head as it's been described with the bumps on it, the real skinny arms and skinny legs. Have you seen that video?
I've seen an image of that kind of creature inside a box, like before being transported.
Can you
It
post
was
it?
circulating a few years
Yeah,
ago,
I'll put it in the
maybe
building.
2 years
I'll go get
ago.
it. This video, I want to suggest if
Yeah,
you look at it, you want to go frame by frame. It's one of those kind of things where in between frames, if you freeze it, you can see the image. If you just watch it straight through, it's kind of hard to pick up.
yeah. But more than those cases, why I am here talking with you is because we are asking for scientists to come to Peru, geneticists, to take samples and safeguard the sample all the way until it's sequenced properly and everything. We need molecular biologists, we need bioinformaticians, we need more forensics to come, and we need a very good tomographer, because in one of these bodies, inside one of these, the larger bodies, uh, there was a fetus found. And apparently, in the tomographic image, the fetus has 3 fingers, but it's not a 100% clear image. We need a much better tomographer to look into this. If the fetus has 3 fingers, who's going to trick that? Inside a dried body, inside another body like this. So what we are asking is for help. It's very easy. All a scientist that can help needs to do is call the university and speak with Dr. Roger Zuniga, the anthropologist that is coordinating this research.
Go ahead, Urs.
Hi, Giorgio again. What I was wondering, are you an experiencer? And If you are, when was your first sighting, or have you ever had a UFO experience? Thank you.
Yes, I'm not a heavy duty experiencer, but yes, since the age of 13, I was part of a group in which members of my family, after practicing Silva mind control thoroughly, I mean, every day, very intensely, they began to develop capacity for automatic writing. And they communicated allegedly with beings that have an underground base south of Lima, only about 45 miles south of Lima. And I said, well, let's make an appointment. Let's see if it's true. And my uncle Tadeo, and another person, they made this appointment through psychography. About 10 of us went there. I was only 13. And lo and behold, a lens-shaped luminous craft came out of the ocean at about 250 feet away from us, just behind the surf, and it was hovering over the ocean for about 1 minute at about maybe 10, 15 feet high above the sea. And then it disappeared, almost like contracting onto itself. And then it reappeared like 10 minutes later. Again, lens-shaped, about 40 feet in diameter. And that's when I verified to my satisfaction that this was not just my uncle's imagination, it was objectively real. We all saw it. So that's how it started. That was in 1975.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, it really makes me think. I just literally sat here listening to your story in awe, because when you hear people tell their experiences one after another, and I've been doing this for a year in these spaces, and it's the most amazing part, because one of the things I read today is there's a pattern in truth. And I am seeing that here today, and it's amazing, because how can we, not listen to all of the experience or stories and say that this is evidence? It's not all the evidence, but it is evidence towards there actually being a phenomena. And how can we not take this seriously? I thank you so much for sharing that story, Giorgio. That was really beautiful.
Yes, and part of the mystery is, why is the evidence maybe not 100% objectively conclusive for everyone to agree upon, but the evidence includes interpersonal, intersubjective experiences. They never disappear. They're part of this phenomenon from always. I think that that's a clue of how this phenomenon, of the mechanism behind the phenomenon. It has to include an intersubjective factor.
Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you. Giorgio, I just caught, I was reading one of the documents day before yesterday, and I noticed that one of the beings apparently died of a spear thrust or a knife thrust to the chest that basically went through lung, other organs, all the way to the opposite chest wall. Are you aware of that particular being and what else they might have found with that?
I think we might be talking about the same. He was allegedly a child,
Yeah.
Around 8 to 12 years of age in human terms. And also his left femur was fractured badly. So what the forensic doctor said at the time was that probably he fell on his side. I think that these hybrid beings had very difficult time walking. Their toes are so long, and it would be so difficult to walk and to be adapted here on Earth. Some of the researchers say, they try to explain it away. They try to say, no, there must have been another way of walking that was practical for them. But no, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. So probably, I can imagine this was a child who wanted to play, wanted to get out of whatever he was, and he fell. He fell from some height and hurt himself. And what the forensics said is that these kind of fractures, like of the femur, usually take you to death, especially in ancient times.
Yeah. I don't know if you're aware of the Ariel school incident back in the, I believe it was the early to mid 1990s. The children who saw the beings associated with the UFO described them waddling. Was the way that they walked. They would waddle. And looking at the hip structure and how long the toes are of these beings, it would almost seem like that's how they would look as well, trying to walk. It'd be almost like a waddle, kind of like sort of like a penguin does, back and forth. But the injuries I noticed across these beings, several of them that I've seen the X-rays and CAT scans on, they have vertebral fractures, all different types of injuries. Were they killed by the local humans, or do you think they might have been involved in some type of a craft that crashed and then they were recovered out of the craft?
Well, that's a good question, but it's too early to tell. Apparently, well, the Nazca were not that peaceful themselves. They were head hunters. They collected heads from their enemies. Yeah. The word Nazca derives from a Quechua word, nanasca, which basically means like the place of pain. And I don't know how they really call themselves, but now they're called Nazca, in modern times. They were always searching for water. They lived in a harsh environment and they had wars with other peoples. So I don't know. I suspect that they sort of live together with some of these hybrid beings. And I don't know. Maybe they fed them, maybe they helped them, because I don't think they could have helped themselves.
Yeah.
At this moment, Dean, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I just want to say I am going to be closing up the space here in a few minutes. So if anyone has any last minute things they want to ask or say, I'd love to do a round. Urs, Just.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you, Sarah, for having this awesome space. I hope you have fun, in a little bit. And thank you to everyone for coming to space and supporting us up here. Thank you. And thank you for Giorgio for your stories.
Thank you for having me. This is my first time intervening in one of these venues.
It's been amazing. And, I love that Science Bob is here. And Dean and Gonzalo, you guys have been, holding the court down with the questions. And also, they're great people to get you information that you're asking for and possibly hook you up with people that can help you. In honor of King Owakata, this has been an amazing space with all of you. I really quick want to go to Mac, who just jumped in, and then Just for last words.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Amazing space you have here. Really love it. I've been kind of listening into Giorgio. Thank you for your hard work and efforts for getting this disclosure out. Giorgio, I put it up in the nest and I've DM'd you as well, is that I may have possibly seen and interacted with these three-fingered beings in my youth when I was living in Mumbai, India. So this craft that I saw with my brother had a being inside it, and all we could see was a three-fingered hand waving at us. And then when the tridactyl disclosures came out, I was like, holy shit, there is actually a three-fingered being out there. So it's just a speculation on my part, but it was a pretty amazing experience, and it was up close as well. So I'd like to speak to you about that in the back channels if possible.
Definitely. Let's remember that Robert Salas, Captain Robert Salas, also describes an encounter with three-finger beings, gray-like three-finger beings. But these ones, the little ones, they don't look so much as a regular gray, though. They look more like the E.T. the extraterrestrial type of head. Although the human-sized ones, some of them really look more like grays too.
Thank you, Giorgio. Wolf is just been added really quick. We're about to close down the space. Did you have any last words?
It's funny because I heard you say that as well. So I thought, well, I'd just drop in. There is a great deal of evidence of some clawed entities, isn't there? That even down to prints underground, they find a lot of prints that are cloven, but they're not cloven; they're clawed. They're triclawed. It's one of the things that I've talked to people who do a lot of underground work, and they say that there's this repetitive in certain areas, and so I think there is off-planet stuff, but I do think that maybe I think who was it just said earlier, Giorgio, was mentioned about the Nazca. I think that underground we have some very related or relatable, even relations, even entities with this clawed foot, and it's for more climbing as opposed to up on the surface of the earth. You need different apparatus. But this, I think, is true. Yeah, I do.
Yes, one of the hypotheses is that these three-clawed beings could climb trees, like the sloth, more or less. I don't know, something like that. All of these requires further study from multiple disciplines, multiple scientific disciplines. We need to get together and start reaching some conclusions, at least that these are real, that these are important biological finding. We need to get together and show this to the world. All that's really necessary is to join the team. One of the reasons that people do not join is because the archaeological site or where this was found is not clear. But many discoveries in Peru started like this. Usually the grave robbers, they find the place, and then later on the scientists claim the site. But in the beginning, they're usually the ones that do it. So more important than knowing exactly where the place is of the finding is that we have physical specimens. That's more important, because we can analyze the physical specimens and see if they are anomalous or not.
This is amazing, and this is a great spot to end the space. Giorgio, please feel free to follow, everyone you see up here. They're amazing, and pretty much all the listeners. Honestly, you guys, thank you for being here. And hop into a space. I'm certain there are others in this community that are not here tonight that would love to ask you questions. And so thank you.
There are some you should stay away from.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sarah, can I say something real quick before you shut down?
Sure, go ahead, Dean.
And I'll make this really, really quick. Earlier this evening, there was a post, I don't remember by who, but it was a snippet from the upcoming season of Skinwalker Ranch where they're talking with a local sheriff's deputy. And he was talking about an encounter that he investigated where there were 3-toed footprints wherever this encounter happened. So that I found that to be very, very interesting and coincidental that we had this conversation tonight after seeing that post.
Highly coincidental. I love it. That's awesome. And I want to say, this is a great conversation to go out on, for 2024. Of course, we've got 24 plus more hours left of 2024. And I'm sure there's going to be some really great spaces. If I don't see you in them, I hope you guys, have a great new year. And if you're just chilling at home, that's awesome, and enjoy it. Because some of us have to go out there, deal with the evening. So anyway, Have a great evening, UFOs, and I'll see you guys, in the chats. Have a good one.
Thank you, Sarah. Much success in 2025 for all of us.